For a seed to achieve its greatest expression, it must come completely undone. The shell cracks, its insides come out, and everything changes. To someone who doesn't understand growth, it would look like complete destruction. Hello and welcome to the Patience to Prosperity podcast, where we learn how to act in opposition of our limiting beliefs in order to reach our fullest potential. I am so incredibly excited for today's episode because we're talking about a concept that took me so long to understand that it was vital to my healing journey. I thought that I could skip over this and heal without facing the discomfort that comes with the concept of vulnerability, which is what we will be talking about today. So take a seat with this one because this is a heavy concept and it's really hard for us to become comfortable with the idea of being vulnerable, not only with others but also with ourselves, because when we're being vulnerable with the things that are making us react in ways that are not necessarily the state that we want to be living in, it feels uncomfortable. It's hard for us to accept that. And acceptance is a huge part of vulnerability, because when we're not capable of accepting something about ourselves that is so hard for us to put out there, when we're afraid to be vulnerable with ourselves or others, we're actually afraid of accepting whatever this is ourselves. We're not accepting that this thing that is holding so much weight and causing so much destruction in our life is actually true, and it's actually a part of us. But just because it's a part of us now doesn't mean that it's always going to hold this weight and it's always going to feel this heavy. Because I promise you, once you become vulnerable with the thoughts that are going through your head and the experience that you're enduring that's causing this heaviness right now, that weight will be lifted off of your shoulders. I can promise you that. No one is going to judge you for speaking your mind. And I'm going to get into that later, because vulnerability will actually make people like you more. No one's going to judge you, I promise you. At least the right people won't judge you. So our first step with being vulnerable is simply asking ourselves, what's making us afraid of being vulnerable? A lot of the time, it's not actually about other people knowing deep information about ourselves. It's literally just about us being afraid to accept it ourselves, like I just said. But the second that you accept your truth, you plant the seed of infinite growth. Because now you're addressing that there is a problem, and that's not something that we should look at in a negative way, because now that we have addressed there's a problem, we can take the steps that we need to take in order to learn from it and grow from it, because life is not meant to be smooth sailing. We're going to hit bumps in the road no matter how happy we are in our lives or how happy we should be. Granted, we have what other people don't. So when we accept that something is bothering us and something's affecting us and it's getting in the way of our growth and it's holding us back and keeping us at a standstill and we can't seem to shake it, once we accept that, we can just step away from it from a second and be like, okay, this is affecting me. What am I going to do about it now? Because I can't live like this for the rest of my life. And a lot of the times it helps to tell other people what you're experiencing, because you may not even know that other people might be experiencing the exact same thing that you are or something similar to it, and you're able to empathize with this person and actually connect with them on a deeper level because of this, which will help create these amazing connections with others. that you wouldn't be able to get otherwise. But you have to understand that vulnerability and authenticity really coincide, and you can't really have one without the other, because we can't fully love ourselves until we know ourselves. So that's where that authenticity comes into play. When we're most authentic, that means that we know who we are. We are stable. Our root is stable and it's waiting to be watered, and our growth is inevitable. So we can't fully love ourselves until we know ourselves, and we can't fully know ourselves if we don't love ourselves. And maybe just pausing here and thinking about that for a second, because I think for me personally, I thought for so long that I could hate myself into someone that I loved. I thought that all of the things that I hated so deeply about myself would just wash away one day if I just kept pouring hate into myself. You have to understand that you're a compilation of everything that you love. You can't label yourself as broken. You can't take all of the things that you hate about yourself and label yourself as these things, because we are what we believe. When you tell yourself that you're ugly, you're unworthy, you're unloving, all of these things, you're gonna embody that, and you're gonna show up into the world radiating that energy, which is going to make less people connect with you and less abundance come into your life. But once you open yourselves up to the universe and you open yourselves up to this abundance and growth and just infinite potential that you don't even know that you have, that's when all the good will start fostering. I want you to get a piece of paper and a pen and just make a list of all of the things that you love. It could be literally the smallest things ever or the biggest things in the world. It could be materialistic or not. Don't put any labels on it. Just open up a piece of paper and go to work. Just write down all of the things that you love. And when you're done, I want you to tell yourself that all of these things are inside of you. They're a part of you. They make you who you are. The things that you hate about yourself are only there because they're trying to teach you lessons. Because you're not going to hate these things forever when you do the work to go through your healing journey and grow as a person. Because with growth, there's learning. The two go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. So understanding that we are not to label ourselves as the things that we hate about ourselves, and we're not broken. The things that we have to work on, we should be looking at as opportunities, not as blockages, not as something that's limiting us. It's only furthering our potential and furthering our growth, which is why I'm so grateful that it took me so long to understand that I had to be vulnerable with myself and with others. Because guess what? If I didn't understand how important vulnerability was, and I didn't get over that and let my spirit come through and silence my ego, I would not have the courage to sit on this mic right now making this podcast episode. So you're only limiting your own potential when you're putting yourself in these boxes and labeling yourself. So I mentioned that when we're vulnerable with others, we create actual, real, deep connections with others. And this is the next concept I want to talk about, because when you don't open yourself up to others, they'll always feel like they can't fully understand you. And maybe it will help by thinking about a person that popped into your head when I said that. Someone that you maybe have known for a little while now, but you still can't seem to fully know them and understand them. And it's really hard to fully connect with them. And maybe think about why that is, because a lot of the times it can be a lack of vulnerability, either on your end or theirs. Because when you're not vulnerable and you are not willing to share the things that are deep and emotional and maybe emotionally taxing to you, you're not allowing other people to see that side of you. So people are looking at you as just this one-dimensional human when there's so many layers to you and so much depth, and you have so much more emotion than you're showing. And I think in this world, we get trapped in this headspace where we feel like we're not allowed to show emotion. We're supposed to just stand strong and be emotionless, and sensitivity is weak. When in reality, it is the complete opposite. You're only hurting yourself when you're not letting yourself express your emotions fully. I hate that vulnerability has this stigma around it that it should be seen as a weakness. And I don't think that that's necessarily a stigma that has been created in society. I think it's more so just something that we tell ourselves. It's, if we're vulnerable with others, then others are going to think that we're weak. If we show real human emotions, then we're not strong enough to take on anything higher than that. When in reality, maybe your path is harder because your calling is higher. Maybe it's so hard for you to get through this because what is going to come out of it is so incredibly huge that at the state that you're at right now, you're not going to be able to fully appreciate it in the sense that you once will be able to. So going back to being vulnerable with others, to connect with someone is to understand someone. And when you're not opening yourselves up to other people, how are they able to connect with you? Because you're not being vulnerable with your experiences and how things make you feel, which is creating this lack of connection because they can't understand where you're coming from because you're not expressing it. And communication is so huge. People can't read your mind. You know, like, it affects your relationships with others so much when you're not allowing yourself to be vulnerable. Because a lot of the times when we're fighting our own demons and we're having these constant negative thoughts racing through our heads and we're feeling like something else is controlling us constantly, we're not going to be super happy, chipper people. We're probably not going to be the most fun people to be around. And this may make people not want to be around us. And that's something that may be hard to face, but look at it in the sense that when we're vulnerable with these people and when they choose to understand us and just listen to us and attempt to understand us, at least, that's when they'll be able to rationalize the way that we're acting in the moment. You know, like maybe you've been a lot more dismissive lately with your best friend. And it's because you're going through this really hard state in your life that you haven't opened up to her about. And maybe she's distancing herself from you a lot. And you can't seem to understand why. It feels like the whole world is against you because you're going through such a dark place right now. And you're trying to get through everything yourself. And you think that you can get through all of this alone. You just got to get past it, and then everything else will fall into place. This is your ego taking over here, thinking that you can get through it all by yourself and you don't need any help. When in reality, like, we're meant to have these connections in our life. We're meant to fall back on the people that care about us and that we can trust. Because not everything is sunshine and rainbows. You got to open yourselves up to other people. And not always in the sense that you're automatically assuming that these people are going to understand what you're going through, because a lot of the times people are not going to understand, especially when you're in such a dark place. And if someone hasn't been there before, it's really hard to really empathize with what you're going through, no matter how deep you may express it to them. But as humans, we have the ability to sympathize with people no matter what, if we've been through that experience or not. Sympathy is simply just being able to rationalize someone else's feelings and try to understand that what they're going through can be affecting them deeply, and it's something that we shouldn't overlook so fast. And maybe they need an ear, or maybe they need some advice. And I think that's another thing that is really important when someone else is being vulnerable with you, asking them whether they need to hear advice or whether they just need an ear. Because a lot of the times people just need to speak things out loud, and they don't necessarily need you to lecture them. I mean, I know that we've all been there before, where we're sitting with our parents and we're trying to tell them about something that's going on, and they immediately are just turning it into a lecture, and we're like, oh my gosh, Mom, can you just sit there for 2 seconds and listen to what I'm saying without turning this into a learning experience? Like, I get it, I'll get there, let me just talk about it. And it can become so frustrating. So it's really important to just ask people what they need and be able to be that person for them. It's really powerful. It really will build such deep connections for you throughout your life. So going back to vulnerability being looked at as something as weak and something you should be ashamed about, vulnerability is quite literally the complete opposite. Vulnerability takes a great deal of strength and integrity and courage to endure. You are completely unraveling parts of you that you've never shown to anyone else before, and you're putting it out there to be judged. And I know I said before, like, the right people are not going to judge you when you're vulnerable, and I stand true to that completely. But in the moment, we may not know this, in the moment, it's very high stakes. We feel like there's so much judgment attached to it, and people are going to think of us completely differently. And because we've put these labels on ourselves that we're weak and we're this and we're that, we think that other people are going to put these labels on us, and they're going to look at us like we view ourselves, when it is actually the complete opposite. And if someone else is judging us based on the things that we're opening up about, it is only ever because of their own insecurities being projected onto you. And that's so important to remember when other people are being mean to us or trying to bring us down and maybe making really rude comments toward us or talking behind our backs. We have to understand that the only reason they're doing these things is because they are so uncomfortable with who they are in themselves that they feel the need to bring others down, because that feeds their ego. So just know that there's nothing wrong with you. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you, and you have always been worthy of love and understanding in this life. You deserve someone who understands what you're going through or makes an attempt to understand what you're going through, because that is the highest form of love, in my opinion. Someone who is willing to try to understand where you're coming from and understand who you are as a person, that is a person who truly loves and cares about you. Someone who has no desire to understand who you are and why you are the way you are doesn't actually love you at the end of the day. And they don't actually care about you as much as they may say that they do. They might just like having you around because you're a good person and you bring good into their life, and maybe you do a really good job at understanding them and sympathizing or empathizing with the things that they're vulnerable with to you. But when we are vulnerable with them and with others, we're allowing other people to open themselves up to us as well, which is such a powerful thing that we're able to do as humans. When we show up as our most authentic selves and we express ourselves freely without judgment, we're opening doors for other people to feel safe with doing that themselves. Because I can promise you, every single person who walks through this earth has something hidden beneath them that they've never told a single soul before. They have something that they're latching onto that they've never said out loud. And this can create so much shame and guilt that can fester inside of us when we're not opening ourselves up to other people or accepting these things ourselves, because then we're just shaming ourselves into changing, and that will never ever end up where we're meant to be. You can't shame or hate yourself into someone you love, like I said in the beginning of this episode, because shame stems from a place where we were not acting in our true self. We were acting in a way that was in opposition of who we really are, and that's why we feel this shame. That's why we feel so guilty about what we did. But understanding that everything in life, literally everything in life, is a learning experience if you're willing to make it that. We don't have any failures in this lifetime unless we continuously make these failures over and over again and we don't learn from them. But the second that we do learn from them, it's no longer a failure. It's part of our growth experience. So detaching from this shame is going to be so huge for your whole experience with vulnerability and ability to accept who you truly are. And what you're going through is not to put labels on yourself that you are nothing but your experiences, because you're so much more than that. You're every single thing that you love. And I know I've brought up the concept of acceptance a lot in this podcast too, and I haven't really touched too much on how impactful it is, but when we accept something that we're going through, we're giving our pain a place to exist, and we're allowing it to move through us, which is so incredibly vital for our healing journey. We have to be able to move past this pain. It's not something that's going to stay forever, and we have to remind ourselves that it's temporary. It's not permanent. We're not going to feel like this forever, and it's not going to stay with us throughout our whole lives, and it was never meant to. But accepting that we are going through it, or we did go through it, and maybe we're just in the grieving process right now and we're trying to move past it, but we can't seem to move past it because we're not willing to be vulnerable with it. And vulnerability can look like so many different things. Vulnerability can be opening up to a therapist, opening up to a complete stranger, opening your notes app and writing things down, or journaling about it. Maybe opening up your voice memo and just speaking it out loud to yourself, or talking to a friend that you really trust, a family member that you really trust. And I know that talking to other people about it, especially people that we know, can feel a lot harder to us because, like I mentioned before, we think that these people are going to look at us the way that we view ourselves. But that is not true. And understanding that what we're not expressing, what we're not allowing ourselves to move through us, we're suppressing. What we're not expressing, we are suppressing. So when we're suppressing things, they are still there deep inside of us. They are not going to leave us. They will stick with us, and they'll surface more and more. They'll overtake our brains and our thoughts more and more throughout our days until we work through them and we accept them for what they are, and we do the work that we need to do to get through them. And I mentioned how it can be a lot harder for us sometimes to grasp being vulnerable with other people because of how they'll view us. But in the case that we come to realize that our fear of being vulnerable stems from our fear of others looking at us through a different lens, we must realize that people actually like you better when you're more authentically yourself. So no one who is actually meant to be in your life will ever leave you for being vulnerable with them. And you have to tell yourself this as many times as it takes for you to believe, because I promise you that people are only going to love you so much more for being who you are to your core, rather than trying to be someone that you're not and trying to hate yourself into a person that you love. When we place an expectation for ourselves to constantly live up to a perfectionistic demeanor, the shame that is buried alongside our insecurities will continue to grow roots inside of us until we're forced to accept ourselves as we are. And this is exactly what I mentioned before about all of this pain. It's just going to surface more and more when we try to suppress it. What we are not expressing, we're suppressing. This is so important to remember. There's no easy way out of it. You can't try to cut corners and just avoid this thing in hopes that it'll just dissipate one day. You gotta work through it, and I know it's hard, but what's harder? Working through it and being able to create tools that will help you through so many experiences throughout the rest of your life and will make you a better, stronger person that's able to connect with people more deeply, or letting this pain bury inside of you and just completely control you and feel like it's just eating away at you. Because we're not meant to live like this, and you can't accept that this is just how life is supposed to feel, and that you're always supposed to be feeling shame and guilt for the things that you're experiencing, and you should feel like you can't open up to people. That is not how we're supposed to live our lives. We are supposed to connect with other people and open ourselves up to other people. And I know that this is hard. Trust me, I know this is hard. But speaking from my own experience and it taking 18 years of my life to finally work up the integrity to be vulnerable, I have never felt stronger in my entire life. And I felt victim to that mindset my entire life, that being vulnerable would make me weak. Now look what I just said. It only made me 10 times stronger. Because now I'm not afraid to speak my mind, and I know that the people that are willing to listen are people that truly care about me. And being a person that is an overthinker and kind of needs reassurance sometimes to truly understand that someone cares about me the way that I care about them, when I am vulnerable with others and they give me the space to vent to them and to just put all of my fears and insecurities and limiting beliefs out on the table for them to just be heard in the world, it shows me that this person actually loves me for who I am. So I mentioned all of these fears and limiting beliefs that build up when you're trying to be vulnerable with someone, because maybe you really do want to be vulnerable and it's something that you're working towards, but you just can't seem to get there. You just feel so stuck and stagnant and you don't know what to do. You have to do some digging and figure out where this belief that we always have to be perfect and that people shouldn't see this side of us stemmed from. Where did you learn this? Because you weren't born thinking this way. Maybe one of your parents showed you this growing up, that you weren't allowed to express yourself freely with other people. Maybe it was a past relationship you had or a friendship you had. Just digging really deep, opening your journal and just letting your thoughts flow freely with no judgment. And every single time that I bring up digging deeper and opening up your journal and stuff like that in these podcast episodes to come, I want you to understand that every single time you open your journal, you are the only person that is reading this. No one else has access to your journal. So let all of those judgments just hang on the back burner. Because when you're letting these judgments control how much you're allowed to say in your journal, you're not getting the full experience from it. You're limiting yourself from fully expressing how you feel, which is not going to release the emotions that we're working to release when we open our journal. But when we do this inner work and we really dig to find out where everything is stemming from, this is going to help us work to forgive our past and move towards becoming our most authentic selves. And forgiveness is also something that we can't look past as something that we can not include in our healing journey, because we have to be able to forgive our past and know that our past selves were doing the best that they possibly could with what they were given at the time and with what they knew at the time. Because we can't know what we're not taught. And I think we're so hard on ourselves sometimes to react in better ways or handle situations in ways that we maybe would have now but didn't know to at the time. And that's okay, because we weren't supposed to. Our past experiences are supposed to be exactly as they were. And you're exactly where you're meant to be right now, because if you weren't, you would be somewhere else. Let me say that again. You are exactly where you're meant to be right now, because if you weren't, you would be somewhere else. So showing compassion to yourself, if it's maybe taking you some time now to really grasp being vulnerable with others, just giving yourself the grace that you need and allowing yourself to take the time that it takes to get there. Not putting any time limits on yourself, not putting any expectations on yourself. We're only working out of intention in this life. We're setting intentions, not expectations. Because when we're living out of intent, we will never let shame and guilt overcome us, because we knew that our intentions were pure. But when we're living with high expectations for ourselves, oftentimes we're not going to reach them, and that's where that guilt and that shame fosters, which I will do a whole other episode on. I can talk about that forever. So the last thing that I want to touch on is how we sometimes refrain from opening up to others, not because we care too much about what they think about us or that we can't fully accept that this thing is happening to us, but actually because we feel as though we would be a burden on them, on the person that we're opening up to. But you're only being a burden to yourself when you're suppressing your pain, because you're inhibiting yourself from being able to grow and learn from this. And you're also hindering your relationship with this person that you so badly want to open up to, but can't because you think that it's going to add too much stress onto them. But let's look at it this way. If we have a person in our life that we're scared of opening up to simply because we think that we're going to be a burden on them, this is such a blessing in disguise, because this means that that person truly cares about us. This means that we know that this person loves us so deeply that they take on our struggles as their own. And they internalize our feelings so deeply that it can actually hurt them. And trust me, I get it. We don't want to be burdened on other people because people have their own shit that they have to deal with. I get that. And I've been where you are. I am you. But it is not up to you to determine how much someone else can handle. It is not up to you to shrink yourself because it may be too much for someone else. You are always enough and never too much. Always remember that. And I'm gonna leave today's episode on that note. I really hope that you guys enjoyed today's episode as much as I did sitting here talking to you. This is a concept that I hold very near and dear to my heart, and it's something that took me so long to fully understand was as important as it is. So please feel free to always DM me with any questions, with any vulnerable thoughts that you have, literally anything at all. My DMs are always open for you, and I'm always an ear for you. So without further ado, if you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to share it to someone else that you may think needs to hear it and may benefit from it as well, because that's such an empowering ability that we have in this podcast world and this social media world, to be able to share things that can help other people. And that's all I ever want from this podcast. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope that today helped and you become more comfortable with being vulnerable with the people around you, understanding that they will only ever love you more because of it. But yeah, anyway, stay tuned for next week's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.